Vietnam's fairy tales, the tale of Baronet and Lime. Once upon a time, there was a family having two siblings named Tung and Lang. These two young boys had the figures and faces very much identical. They were so alike that the family members were often confused. Their father was the tallest man in the region, who had been summoned to the capital to be granted a reward by King Hong. The king named the father Gao or Hai. Since then, the family has adopted Gao as their family name. When two brothers grew up, their parents passed away. Both of them loved each other very much, never wanted to separate for just a minute. Before his death, the father sent Tung to learn with Mr. Liu, a Taoist master. But when Tung came to study, Lang refused to stay home alone. He begged to go with his brother. The Liu family had a daughter who was at the same age of them. To find out who was older and who was younger, one day the girl of Liu family made a trick. While the brothers were hungry, she served one of them one bowl of porridge and the other one pair of chopsticks. Standing behind the thatched wall, she looked through the crack and saw one person giving the porridge to the other to eat. She muttered, "Ah, that funny guy is the older brother." Since then, Tung and the girl dated with each other. The love between the two grew bigger every day. Recognizing that, Master Liu willingly allowed his daughter to marry Tung. After the wedding, the couple moved to a new house, with Lang followed to live with them. From the marriage, Tung was still tender with his brother and did not pamper him like before. In the past, Lang was often taken care of by Tung, but now Lang had many lonely days. Lang noticed that for a few times Tung wanted to avoid him. Yes, he's in love with his wife and forgot me. Lang's heart was filled with sadness and depression. One day, Lang and Tung went to work in the farm till dusk. Lang came back home first. He had just stepped into the door when Tung's wife ran out of the room and hugged him. Lang exclaimed. The mistake of the sister-in-law made both of them so embarrassed. At the same time, Tung entered the house. Since then, Lang felt a new character of Tung. Tung was jealous. Jealousy made Tung's indifference towards Lang. Lang got mad and ashamed of himself. He wanted to leave the house and leave all behind. One day at dawn, Lang decided to set off. He followed a path to go on and on. His heart was full of resentment. After walking for a few days, Lang came to the bank of a large river. Seeing the rushing water, he was confused. There was no sound of a rooster growling or a dog barking, but Lang decided not to return. He sat down on the bank, held his face and cried. He cried so much that the birds that went to find food late at night could hear him sobbing. The next morning, Lang became a corpse. No more soul inside. He had turned into a rock. Tung did not notice that Lang had left at first. However, for a long time he did not see Lang come home. He went to look for Lang at houses of his acquaintances, but could not find him. Knowing that Lang left because of being resentful, Tung regretted so much. The next day, when Lang still did not return, Tung panicked and left his wife at home to set off to find Lang. After a few days, he reached the bank of a large river. There was no way to pass the river, so Tung walked along the riverbank and finally found his brother, who is now a rock. Tung stood right next to the rock and cried until there was no sound of rushing water running under the bank. Tung died and turned into the tree that grew straight up into the sky right next to the rock. Tung's wife also waited so long for her husband but saw no signs, so she left home to look for Tung. In the end, the same river stopped her footsteps. She sat next to the tree, crying all her eyes out. Finally, she died also and turned into a vine climbing around a tree. After waiting for a long time, but none of the three came back, the master sought the help of everybody in the village to look for them. In front of the rock and two strange trees, they could only build a shrine to worship all three young people on the riverside. People around our area called the temple harmonious brothers, faithful husband and wife. 1 year later, there was a severe drought. All the plants have withered. Only the tree and the vine growing next to the rock in front of the shrine was still green. People think it was sacred. One day King Hong came to the region. Passing by the shrine, he was surprised to see the strange tree. She said, "Which god is this shrine for? I've never seen these plants before." To answer the king's question, the Mandarin called a few old local men to ask. The more he listened, the more the king was touched by the story. He drew the leaves and climbed on the rock to look carefully. He then sent a man to climb a tree to pick the fruit to taste it. The taste of the nut was acrid and not special. When chewing the leaves of the plant, a strange and interesting taste came to the tip of the tongue. It was both sweet and spicy. Suddenly, the Mandarin cried out, "Oh my God, blood!" Everybody stepped back in astonishment. It turned out that the juices from chewing the fruit and the leaf of those two plants, once being dropped on the rock, suddenly turned red like blood. The king asked people to chew 3 things together. Then all felt hot, as if drinking wine. The lips turned red and the face turned rosy beautifully. The king said, "It's so magical, that's them. Their love is so passionate, so rosy." Since then, the king ordered to grow more of these 2 types of plants everywhere. It was noticed that it was the law that made by the king to enforce young men and women at marriage, no matter what they had, ought to find 3 items: betel nut, areca leaf, and lime for everyone to chew and spit to remember that love would never fade away. Therefore, since then, Vietnamese people have had the custom of eating betel nuts.